Hello, what's going on? I'm going to teach you a little bit of grammar, okay? I'm an English teacher. I teach grammar. Grammar is boring, blah, but it's actually not so bad, okay? If you really get into it, it's not so bad. And there is a way to develop a kind of a grammar fluency if you're learning English, I feel, okay? So I'm just going to go through and present my way of thinking about grammar. Okay. Let's have a look at the past simple and the present perfect. They're both past tenses. A lot of other languages don't have a present perfect, like Japanese, for example. So you're probably thinking, how the hell do you even use the present perfect? Like, what is the difference between the present perfect and the past simple? Or the past perfect? What does that do? Anyway, so let me explain. For me, there's a kind of a zoom out and a zoom in effect going on with language. Okay? When you're in conversation with someone, you can kind of zoom out of their life and look at the big picture of their life, or you can zoom into details. You can zoom out of days, like today, you zoom out of today, and then you zoom into details of today with the person. Or you zoom out of this year, okay, and then you zoom into details of this year. But yeah, let me get to that later. But for me, do you know if you go to Google Maps, yeah? You go to Google Maps, you zoom out, you can see the countries, the continent, the world, the full globe, okay? You're zooming out. Look at the big picture, there are no specifics. It's unspecific, okay? But then when you zoom in, you can see streets, street names, building names. You can zoom into very, very small details in Google Maps. So it becomes very, very specific, I would say. You're zooming into details. So just think of the present perfect as if you're talking to someone, it's like you're zooming out of their life. You're looking at the big picture. Okay? And then after doing that, then you can start to zoom into details of their life. Okay, let me show you. So let's pretend that you go to a cafe, a park, one of your friends' houses, and you meet someone. You meet someone for the first time, okay? So you want to get to know them. Present perfect is a good way to start a topic with a person. So let's just say, for example, I meet someone and I say, hey, I'm Irish. Have you ever been to Ireland? Okay. Have you ever been to Ireland? Present perfect, there's two verbs, yeah? Have and been. Or let's just say visited. Let's make it a little easier. Have you ever visited Ireland? Or traveled. Have you ever traveled to Ireland? Okay, so have and traveled. So that's a question. That's a present perfect question. Have you ever traveled? Now, the key word there is ever, because I'm asking the person, I'm saying from when you were born until now, in that huge, long time, have you ever traveled to Ireland, somewhere in there? And then the person could say, yeah, yes, I have, or no, I haven't. Okay? Just think of it as it's unspecific. The only thing I know is they've been to Ireland. I know they went. I don't know any details, though. I don't know when. I don't know with who. I don't know anything like that. I just know they did that somewhere in their life, okay? Have you ever been? Yes, I have. And with the answer, you don't need to say, yes, I have traveled to Ireland. You can probably do this in your first language as well. You don't need to say the full thing. You can just shorten it to, have you ever traveled to Ireland? Yeah, I have. Or no, I haven't. Okay. So now, I zoomed out of their life. Ever been to Ireland? Now I know confirmation they have. Now I can start to zoom into details of that specific trip. So I could say, oh, when did you travel to Ireland? So past simple, okay? When did you travel to Ireland? Did, past simple. And they could answer, oh, I traveled to Ireland 5 years ago. I traveled to Ireland 5 years ago. Now, I traveled, past simple. Now, what is going on there? Now, in my mind, I'm zooming into 5 years ago. It's a little detail for me of this trip, okay? I know it was 5 years ago. Now, next question could be, who did you go with? Okay, who did you go with? Who did you go? Did, past simple question. Okay, so who did you go with? I went with my friend. Okay, I went with my friend. So I went, past simple. Now, just remember that past simple means that You're zooming into details, okay? You're zooming in to the map of their life in a way. Where present perfect was I was zooming out. Have you ever, in your whole life, have you ever been to Ireland? Yes, I have, confirmation. Now I want to zoom into details. So I said, oh, when did you travel? 5 years ago. Who did you travel with? I traveled with my friends. I'm getting, with my friend, I'm getting details, okay? Now, I cannot say, when have you traveled there? Or who have you gone with? Okay, because we're zoomed into this little situation. When you're zoomed in, you cannot use the present perfect when you're zoomed in. You need to use past simple or past continuous. I'm going to show you, okay? So when you're zooming in to details of this little story, it has to be, who did you go with? I went with my friends. When did you go? I traveled there 5 years ago. Okay, past simple. Now you can also zoom in with the past continuous. Okay, so I could ask them, where were you staying in Ireland? Okay, where were you staying? Where were you staying? Were staying, past continuous question. And the person could say, I was staying in Dingle. Okay, there's a little town down in the south. So I was staying in Dingle. So I was staying, past continuous. Was and staying. Now, you just gotta believe me that you can use the past continuous to zoom into details. Okay, I went 5 years ago. Well, I traveled to Ireland 5 years ago. I went with my friend, both past simple, and I was staying in Dingle. Now it's past continuous. Now you may be wondering, what is the difference between the past simple and the past continuous? In that situation, there's no big difference, because I could also say, where I could, past continuous, where were you staying? I could also ask, where did you stay? Where did you stay in Ireland? Past simple. And they could answer, I stayed in Galway. No, not Galway, Dingle. I stayed in Dingle. So, what is the difference between I was staying in Dingle and I stayed in Dingle? Past continuous, past simple? Nothing really. Okay, you just gotta believe me that there's no big difference there. There is a difference sometimes, but for example, I could say I studied engineering in university. Past simple, I studied engineering in university. I could also say I was studying engineering in university. I was studying engineering in university, past continuous. Now, there's no big difference in the meaning or the logic of those two sentences. Okay, I studied engineering or I was studying engineering. The meaning isn't that different. I could use both, okay? Because it's over a general long time, okay? So it doesn't really matter. I would say, yeah, if it's over a general long time, it doesn't really matter that much. It does matter when you get down to very small specific moments, okay? Like, just look at this glass, okay? I could say, this glass here. Is it correct to say, pretend I dropped the glass. Okay, I say, is it correct to say, oh, I was dropping that glass? I was dropping that glass. Or is it more correct to say, I dropped that glass? You cannot say, I was dropping that glass, because when you drop a glass, it's a very quick action. Okay, so it should be past simple. I dropped it. Quick, simple, I dropped that glass. Where past continuous is more of a thing in motion. You know, like, I was watching TV. It's a longer process in the moment. You know, I'm sitting there, I'm breathing, I'm blinking, I'm watching, you know, I'm sitting. It's a longer process, but I dropped the glass. I cannot use past continuous there. For quick actions, things like start. Yeah, the movie started at 7:30. When things start, it's a very quick moment. Okay, you shouldn't really use the movie was starting. It depends. But generally, for small little specific moments, there is a difference between the past continuous and the past simple. Okay, like that's the best example I can think of right now. Dropping a glass. You cannot say I was dropping the glass like it was in slow motion. No, I dropped the glass quickly. But for general longer periods in time, you can use past simple and past continuous. Like, I studied engineering in university and I was studying engineering in university. The logic doesn't really change there. Okay, 1 second. So Now, where am I going with all this? Let's go back to the story. So, have you ever traveled to Ireland? Yes, I have. Zoomed out. Zoom into details. When did you go? Who did you go with? Where were you staying? I was staying in Dingle. Okay. Past continuous. Zooming into details. Don't use present perfect. Don't say where have you stayed, because you're zoomed in. Okay. Don't use the zoom out when you're zoomed in. Use past simple and past continuous. Now, just pretend that I want to change the conversation. Change the topic of the conversation. So what I could do is, now I can use the present perfect again, because I can zoom out again and ask them some new topic, and then we can start zooming into the details of that new topic. So, have you ever been to Ireland? Yes, I have. When did you go? Who did you go with? Where were you staying? Cool. Then I could say, oh, do you know what? I love Japanese culture. Have you ever been to Japan? So now I'm zooming out and I'm looking at their life again. And have you ever been to Japan? Or have you ever traveled to Japan? So have and traveled. Present perfect question. Ever. Okay, have you ever been to Japan? And the person could say, yes, I have. Just for example, yes, I have. Now I can zoom into details of that other story. Okay, so I could say, which city did you visit in Japan? Or which city did you stay in? Okay, so which city did you stay in? Which city did passable, did you stay in? Oh, I stayed in Tokyo. Okay, I stayed in Tokyo. I stayed, past simple, positive answer. Okay, I stayed in Tokyo. Past simple, we're zooming into a detail. Now, have you ever been to Japan? Yes, I have. I just know the unspecific of, okay, they went to Japan, but I don't know any details. Now we use past simple, and I have a little detail. I know they stayed in Tokyo. I stayed in Tokyo, past simple. So then I could ask them, who were you traveling with? Past continuous zooms into details as well, okay? Who were you traveling with? Blah, blah, blah. Who were you traveling with? I was traveling with my best friend, okay? I was traveling with my best friend. So I was traveling, past continuous, with my best friend. We've zoomed into a detail, okay? Now, first detail, I know it's Tokyo. Second detail, I know they were traveling with their friend, okay? And then I could also ask yes or no questions, okay? So a yes or no question begins with the small verb. I call it the small verb, but it's the auxiliary verb, okay? Small verb to me. And for the past simple, it's did, okay? So I could say, did you stay in an Airbnb? Because I'm starting the question with did, okay? Did you stay in an Airbnb? If you start with the small verb, then it's yes or no. So they could say, yeah, I did stay in an Airbnb. Or yeah, I stayed in an Airbnb. Okay? So yes, I stayed in an Airbnb. That's another detail for me, okay? They stayed in Tokyo. They visited Tokyo. They were traveling with their friend, best friend, past continuous detail. They stayed in an Airbnb, another detail. Okay, we're zooming in. We're zooming into that little story of theirs. So you see there, we have, in the beginning, I zoomed out. Have you ever been to Ireland? Yes, I have. Unspecific. And then we zoomed into some details. When did you go? Who did you go with? Where were you staying? Okay, we zoomed into details. And then I wanted to change the topic. So I said, oh, you know what? I love Japanese culture. Have you ever been to Japan? Okay, we zoomed out again. And I zoomed out of their life. Have you ever been to Japan? Yes, I have. Unspecific. After that, now I can zoom in. So, where did you stay? I stayed in Tokyo. Who did you go with? I went with my best friend. Did you stay in an Airbnb? Yes, I did. Okay, past simple, past continuous, details. So just remember that there's some kind of zoom out, zoom in effect going on. And I haven't seen any other teachers explain it that way. So I'm pretty happy that I'm the only one to do it. But maybe there are some other teachers who have seen that kind of effect. But that's pretty much it for now. I'll give you a little fun fact. Well, maybe it's not that fun, but when you zoom out and then you zoom in to details, you can actually, from that point of zooming in, you can actually talk about the past before that point, and you can talk about the future that was going to happen after that point. Okay, now that's where the past perfect and things like would, there's a way to use would where it's like future from a past point. It gets really tricky, but I'll properly explain that in the future. Okay, but you just got to remember, there's a zoom out, there's a zoom into details. Wait, there's a zoom out with the present perfect, unspecific. There's a zoom in with the past simple and past continuous for specific details. Okay, from that point there, you can jump, talk about the past before that point with the past perfect, and afterwards you can, well, from that point you can talk about the future from that point with would and something like was gonna, like in Tokyo, after Tokyo, I was gonna visit Osaka, but I didn't. Yeah, I was going to visit Osaka, but I didn't. I know it's a future intent. It was a future intention for them, but they didn't do it. Okay, and there's a way to use would as well. Like we planned that we would visit Osaka after Tokyo, but it's a complicated construction. But you just got to know that it's possible to zoom out, zoom into details, talk about the future intention from the point, and also talk about the past. Something in the past that happened before that point. Like, for example, had you ever been to Japan before you went to Tokyo? Yes, I had been to Okinawa. Okay, yes, I had. Yes, I had traveled to Okinawa. Okay, it's not have, it's had. So just remember, it's a past thing that happened before a specific past point that you are talking about, because we're talking about this trip to Tokyo. Okay, now we're here in the present, yeah? So it's like past and the past. But I'm going to properly go into all of those tenses again. But I just wanted to give you a quick little explanation of what can happen in a general conversation, okay? Just think about that. Zoom out with the present perfect. Then zoom into details with the past simple and the past continuous. And I'm going to do more of these videos. I'm just going to do these videos, try and do them daily, because it's I can do this in 20 minutes. We're going to look at all the past tenses, things like used to, you can use would in the past as well. Have a look at the present tenses. That's quick. There's nothing much there. Future tenses, there's a lot of different future tenses you can use. Conditionals is insane. It's crazy. Because you have a look at the rules and you think, oh, okay, those are the only rules. But there are like a million variations that you can do with conditionals. There's mixed conditionals. You can use the continuous in conditionals. You don't have to always use would. You can use like should, could, might, must. You don't have to use would. Most students don't know that. But I'm going to go into all of that in future videos. Okay? So this is just the first one. Remember that. Zoom out, zoom in. Zoom out, present perfect. Zoom in with the past simple and the past continuous. Okay? Change topic. Zoom out again with the present perfect. And then zoom into the new details with the past simple and past continuous. Anyway, that's it for today. Take it easy. I hope you become fluent. Why am I doing that? I don't know. Take it easy. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. It's a little bit late, but have a good one.